Live, you are live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the sunrise safari, or in theory a sunrise safari. It's a bit hidden behind the clouds at the moment. And an exciting morning we have planned, because somewhere on Djuma there are lions calling. So a big thank you to Kevin and to Lucy and many others who let us know that they heard lions calling on the Djuma Dam camera. We're very lucky to have such avid viewers. We've also heard them. I'm just trying to figure out where they've gone. And on this chilly morning, 19 degrees, 66 in Fahrenheit, we're setting out on a lion excursion. Good morning again, my name is Jamie. I have Jean-Dre on camera with me. And James is out with Dave, also helping to try and find the lions. We're going to see if we can figure out exactly where they were calling from. When I first heard them calling, they were on the move, somewhere around the eastern section of Djuma, but James has just picked up tracks around the pan. So for those of you who said you heard something drinking, now of course our Djuma cam is a little bit stuck at the moment. We are working on it, but obviously they couldn't see what was drinking. But we think it's the lions, and that they were moving somewhere around here. Quarantine is full of very relaxed looking impala, so I don't think the lions have come up through here, but you never know. What I wanted to do was just sit and listen to the sounds, wait for the lions to call once again to maybe give us a bit more of a direction as to where they might be. And I thought I heard males calling as well, but it's the Nkuhumas that, or probably the Nkuhumas that James has found tracks for. He said it's the tracks of a pride. I'm just sitting listening. At the moment, all I've heard is the ground hornbills tooting off in different directions. That doot, 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 doot sound. No calls of the lions yet. I think we're going to start heading out. Let's see if we can't figure out which way these lions have gone. James is checking to the west of us. We're going to check around Twin Dams, and let's see if we can work this out. I don't think I actually need this hat in hindsight. It's not exactly blindingly bright. Try and keep my revs as low as possible, so if we hear the lions start to call again, we'll be able to hear them. So yesterday on the sunset safari, for those of you who missed it, James had the Nkuhumas around Buffelshoek Dam. They obviously decided to come around in this particular area. There's also always the possibility of the Birmingham boys deciding to come and join them. Come on, lions, we need you to call again. On a cool morning like this morning, it can be surprisingly deceptive, the distance that a lion roar can travel. The colder it is, the further the sound will go. Generally, we can hear a lion's call from about 4 to 5 kilometers, about just under 2 miles to just under 4 miles in distance. Lions, of course, can hear their roars far better than we can, and they can travel up to 10 kilometers in terms of their hearing, which is far, far clearer than ours. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, don't forget that we are coming to you live, and we're coming to you live from Djuma and Arathusa game reserves within the Sabi Sands, which essentially puts us in our own little portion of a 4 million hectare wilderness area, totally unfenced. Animals can come and go at will. Elephants have done some landscaping. They've also, by the way, an update on the Inga's elephant that keeps deciding to come in. Yesterday was responsible for, well, I was more responsible for it, but he was responsible for knocking me on the head with the branch. This morning he's actually come and pushed a tree down completely into our driveway, so getting out this morning was a little bit tricky. Obviously decided that Inga's is the place to be overnight. Large bull, there were huge elephant tracks in our driveway, and it did wake me up at 1 o'clock this morning as he pushed that tree over right outside my bedroom window. I'm going to continue on along Twin Dams, and while I do that, let's pop over to James Hendry's vehicle so that he can say good morning to you.
Good morning, as Jamie instructed. How are you? I hope you're very well wherever you happen to find yourself on planet Earth today, be it in the evening in the Western Hemisphere, or be it in probably the late hours of today, if you happen to be watching from Fiji or indeed Western Australia. It's marvellous to have you with us here live out of the iconic Kruger National Park of South Africa. Off to the east there, we can see a sort of lightening horizon. It is mercifully covered by some clouds for now. These will no doubt burn off in the face of the violent African sun that has been very, very powerful throughout the course of the summer. Now just take a look, Dave. I don't know if you can see there. The clouds are moving unusually from the northeast. Now that is odd, and indicates a weather pattern coming in off the coast of Mozambique. So we are only about 200 kilometers from the Mozambican Channel of the Indian Ocean. That's the channel that is between Mozambique and Madagascar. And quite a lot of weather comes up through there at this time of the year, and weather that is coming in from the direction you can see it moving now is almost certainly coming in off the channel there, as opposed to up from the south, which would have eventually originated in the Cape of Good Hope, the Fair Cape, place of great beauty and very lazy people. My name is James Henry, and it is very nice to be with you this morning. David is on camera. He would show you his thumb, but unfortunately he is shining a light on my face by means of his cell phone, and therefore he is unable to put his thumb up. He is smiling, though, and very pleased to be with you too.
Oh, yes.
And nodding, yes. You are on a live safari, which Jamie told you, so please do talk to us through the course of the morning. The dawn chorus today consists of one grey-headed sparrow just behind us, and so should you wish to tweet like the grey-headed sparrow, #SafariLive is how you should do so. And if you wish to send us an email, questions at WildEarthTV. Otherwise, the YouTube chat function seems to work very well, and you can talk to us on that too. Ask us questions, give us your comments, and they don't have to be necessarily completely related to what we're seeing here. Any questions about Africa or the country in general, we'll be more than happy to answer, especially if we're just driving around exploring. We don't know what's going to be around the next corner, and we are just listening out for those lions which, in rather typical fashion, have ceased their calling basically as we came out here. Nope, just silent. So we're going to ease our way to the south very slowly and see if we can't pick up some tracks. We did have some tracks around Quarantine, but when we heard them calling, they were calling definitely further south. Now, Sharon, you want to know, or Shannon, you want to know how it is that we can possibly tell the difference between male and female calls. Shannon, I have to tell you that I still struggle. Unless I hear them calling together, I really do struggle to tell. Females are slightly softer, and as one might expect, a slightly higher pitch, but it's still a very throaty roar. It's not exactly a gentle soprano that comes out of a lioness's mouth. It is still a throaty, blood-curdling roar. A male louder and slightly deeper, but unless I hear them together, I can't really tell, and I often dispute that people say, oh, there's a lioness calling. I'm not convinced. I've got pretty sensitive ears, and I'm not convinced that there are many who can actually tell unless you hear them calling next to each other. So, Shannon, that's basically what I think, and obviously almost impossible for you to hear through these cameras at the moment, and through the microphones, for example, that are at the Djuma Dam camp. No, just the grey-headed sparrow. He's the only one up this morning. Let's ease our way south and see if we can find something in the way of tracks. So there were some tracks coming west, and so maybe we'll find them coming west further. It's an interesting one from Angel's Aegis. You want to know about nocturnal animals, and given the fact that it is still so early, would it be possible to see some of the nocturnal creatures? Perhaps a civet, which we know is active at late night, an aardvark, which we know, unless it is dead, is also active in the late night. I make that comment, of course, because we found an expired one yesterday. It was a fascinating discovery. No, not really, Angel's Aegis. You know, morning now we're now in the morning. It's quite early for us, but for the animals, for the nocturnal animals, the active time is finished now. The light is up. Possible predators will be around. Now is the time of crepuscular animals that are active dawn and dusk. The cats, well, the big cats, the smaller cats will be in their hidey holes for the course of the day now, as will things like the scrub hares. It's unlikely you'll see a scrub hare feeding at this time of the night. Artifact, the same sort of story. So no, not really. Morning for us starts when it gets light. For most of the animals, it starts probably about half an hour to an hour beforehand. And that's why the lions have stopped calling. They will often call their last before the dawn breaks, and then they go silent. Especially if they've had something to eat during the night, and they just want to have a snooze now for the next 16 hours or so. So we'll drive slowly along this road here and see if we can't pick up some tracks. So quarantine clearings is basically over there behind us. So just over your left shoulder. And if you look behind you, you might be able to see quarantine clearings. One day you will actually be able to do that when we're broadcasting in virtual reality. But today David will just show you. That's your left shoulder, you're looking over everyone. And they were coming to the west from there, and we have come there too, but the sound that they were making sorry, I'm giggling at a question that's coming through, but the sound that we were hearing from those lions was coming from the south around here. Thank you, James Richard. You say that I'm getting, there are two aspects to your comment. You say I'm getting better at fitting the YouTube chat function into my opening monologue. Now, a monologue, of course, comes with a sort of sense of droning on about nothing, I find. I think soliloquy would possibly be a kinder term, James. I hope that I'm not droning on too much when I begin my drives. Here is a little impala who is running away from us. It's actually quite a big impala. David, can you see him? There he is. Just walking off into the greenery, well, the yellowing greenery of the morning. Now these fellows are starting to develop the sort of secondary sexual characteristics that testosterone produces. Now what that means is that their time of rutting or fighting with each other for mating opportunities has actually almost begun. We've seen one or two of them chasing each other about, and by secondary sexual characteristics I mean that they're starting to get quite heavy in the neck, so they're getting a bit stronger, they're ready to box their heads together. Their testicles will start to drop down, and they will start to get a lot more angry. And it's an interesting thing that they shouldn't be like that all the time, and the kudu are getting the same. I mean, it's basically like an injection of anabolic steroids, like a power lifter or some other such person who wished to be very large might develop as a result of the huge influx of hormone. Obviously that's not particularly healthy all the time. There's some buffalo over there, I'll just get into a position to look at them. But also it's very expensive for the body to produce testosterone all the time. And so it's rather clever that they only produce it when the females are about to come into estrus. The rest of the time they're just relaxed and happy with each other. There are some buffalo bulls here. I think let's have a look at them. Good grief, what did I just run over? A small stick. And the point of having a look at these buffalo off the road here is just also so that we can have a further listen to what's going on. There we go, David. I don't think that we'll intrude on their privacy too much more than we are now. So these are buffalo bulls, often a favored target of the Nkuhuma pride. But they look deeply relaxed. Some of them lying, some of them standing. They're almost, to me, look like men who've had a heavy night out and they're now sort of having a meal just before they go to sleep. Like English aristocrats of old. Big night out. messages are about to be called. The oxpeckers, of course, have just woken up. Here's a lovely example of an animal to whom the morning comes, or for whom the morning comes much earlier than it might for us. The oxpeckers are up and about. That means they've been flying around looking for herbivores to sit on. Those are the birds sitting on that buffalo. And they've been doing that since the very first little bit of light came over the horizon. They got up and they started moving around. For them, early, as we would describe it, as I say, is probably about an hour before dawn. And it's amazing to me how quickly the light glows. When we started off, of course, it was pretty much dark. Chewing the cud. Let's see if we can hear any further birds calling. There are the oxpeckers going pss, pss, pss. Still lots of sparrows and some drongos now, and an oriole. So the drongos are the ones off to the left-hand side of your screen going. There are the oxpeckers you can hear. And then to the right-hand side, you can hear the orioles going. And a grey hornbill calling. Plaintive, sad, mournful whistling of the grey hornbill. Miserable because it has no colour on it, like its yellow and red-billed cousins. And a lovely sense, lovely smell out this morning too. Fresh, but slightly moisture-laden and dusty. Now, very excitingly, of course, we have some moisture predicted for Wednesday. How we are going to get through to Wednesday is another matter, of course, because another 2 days of blinding heat are predicted, leading up to the breaking of the drought. 38 degrees Celsius today, which is about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, driving up to 39-40 tomorrow, 102 Fahrenheit. That will not be easy to cope with. But we will be stoic. We will take you on safari nevertheless. So these beefies have been feeding during the night. I think as the heat builds, they are going to go and find some shade and lie down and have a snooze for much of the rest of the day, a bit like the lions. They'll move a bit more than that, though, because they need to eat so much more. And in the meantime, let us continue. While we do that, let's get an update from Jamie. I think she was probably heading in a more accurate direction for where we think those lions were calling from, but the tracks were coming around about here, so between the two of us, let's hope we can find out at least if they've crossed out, and if they haven't, maybe we'll have some lions. See you just now.
I hope I'm heading in a more accurate direction than James is. I'm basically going off gut instinct, unless James has got more fresh tracks that he hasn't mentioned since he found those at the dam. Essentially what I'm doing is trying to go with where I heard them rather than where their tracks came from. Although the central road is not looking terribly promising in terms of tracks. There's just one buffalo with diarrhea. No tracks coming along here. Which is the route I would have expected them to take from Buffelshoek Dam. Just turn this down a little bit. And I'm guessing, it's an entirely pretty much guesswork. I'm just trying to work out if maybe they had killed something around Buffelshoek Dam and walked towards the pan for a drink and then come back. But that doesn't entirely make sense because Buffelshoek Dam has a little bit of water. So they might have killed something in between there. It's a guess, and the reason I say that is because last night was cloudy, last night was windy, perfect hunting conditions if you're a big cat. So there's a chance that they managed it. I just want to double check really carefully here. Okay. All right, should we go left? Should we go right? To the right is east, which is where my gut instinct says that they were calling from. To the left is where James saw the tracks. Let us see if we can work out where we want to go. We go with my gut. Should we go with my gut feeling? Oh, if it's wrong, I'm going to be very sad. That's left. That's right. Okay, let's go right. Let's see how we go. I'm not sure if this is going to work out well for us, but hopefully we'll have a chance to figure it out. Oh, but the tracks were there. No, let's stick with it. Let's make a decision and actually stick to it. We'll do one more loop and then I'll go back towards where James is. Gut instinct tells me they were calling from here. Apparently you were chatting a little bit with James about the difference between male and female roars, and Teresa has put forward a comment that, as she said in her experience, male lions' roars sound a little bit like they have a sore throat, whereas the roar of a female is a little bit clearer. In my experience, it is actually very tricky. I agree with you, Teresa. Actually, I think having a sore throat is a brilliant description of what a lion roar sounds like. In my experience with male lion roars, let's cut down here. With male lions roaring, they tend to be not really that much deeper, not discernibly deeper at a distance, but for me they tend to go on slightly longer. And by that I mean not just the roar itself, but those softer calls afterwards. The ooh, 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 ooh. For me, at the end of the call, male lions tend to harp on a little bit longer than the females. Makes sense because they are probably more likely to need to use those roars as an intimidation factor. For the females, it's a nice way of announcing where they are. Of course, both males and females have territories, although the males are much more stringent about the way that they patrol and much stricter with the incursions of other males in their space. But females can also have serious disagreements. I know the Nkuhumas and Styx did have a minor encounter a couple of weeks ago where the Nkuhumas chased the Styx away from around Cheetah Plains area. It does happen. Unrelated lion prides do not appreciate each other's company. But it is interesting because I think if you go far enough back, you'd probably find that most of the lion prides in this area probably have some degree of genetic relationship. Lion prides are formed when other lion prides get too large and they split away. It could well be that the Talamatis and the Nkuhumas are related, all the Nkuhumas and the Styx. One of those interesting aspects of lion history. I'm glad that Brian and Doodles and James Richards have all agreed with me and said go with your gut feeling. I'm going to. There's another reason I'm checking this eastern edge, and that's the fact that James actually can't in terms of signal at the moment. So I'm leaving him to check the western boundaries while I check the east. But my gut so far has not been backed up by either calls or by tracks. Come on, gut. I hope you've got it right this morning, and it's not just hunger pangs that I'm experiencing. Where to go from here? Okay, I now have a set plan. I've got a set plan in my mind. I know where we're off to. We're going to just keep working in a grid until we figure something out. And while we cruise along and see if my gut instinct was correct or not, James has found one of the largest creatures, in fact the largest creature that we have on Djuma. Let's pop over and have a look.
Starting anew.
Just over there through the thick bush is not the largest elephant I've ever seen by any means, but one elephant, indicating the presence of others by his age. Oh goodness, there's a tiny one here. Didn't even can see it. You see it there, Dave? Just pan to the left. Keep going. Stop. No, keep going. There. Look at that. They are so clever, the way they hide. I don't want to go any closer at this stage. We're not far from them, but the bush is very thick. I think I'll make a noise. And these two, I think, are on the fringes of the herd, and they will therefore probably get a little bit of a fright and move towards wherever the rest of the herd is. Can you hear the hornbills? That plaintive calling of the grey hornbill? There they go. So sad. Bit more of a dawn chorus, but still nothing particularly impressive. I think that's beautiful. That little thing is only about 20 or 30 meters from us, say 100 feet or so. Here it comes. There we go, breaking cover slowly. Will be very aware of us and trying to stay slightly hidden away from us until sure that we are not, that we don't have any nefarious intentions. And of course, the more we sit and the more we spend time being quiet and accommodating to the elephants, the more they will behave like that incredible sighting that Jamie had last night, where they just walk past the vehicle, pay you no attention whatsoever, and get on with their lives. And that's just the best. And Deborah, Armchair Traveller, you're absolutely correct. It is absolutely astonishing how an elephant is able to disappear, despite their vast size, behind just a scraggly bush or tree. Now, I think half of the reason for that is their colour. That grey colour is brilliant, especially to our eyes, that grey colour is very difficult to see out here. And instead of this kind of bright khaki that many of us wear, we did a wonderful experiment the other day with Brian, who was wearing supposedly, camouflaged khaki colour. And it was so obvious in the bush because nothing else is that colour. But this grey colour, if we really wanted to be disguised in the bush, this grey colour of elephants is brilliant. And if you go behind just a little thicket, you just disappear almost completely. I think, though, there's quite a lot of sort of just almost luck behind that grey colour. The skin of just about all animals out here, if you take off the fur, is quite a similar grey, dark grey to that. If you think of a domestic animal, if you think of your house cat or your dog, the skin underneath the fur is often a grey colour. And so I wonder if the fact that elephants are grey is just a function of the fact that they don't have much hair on them, rather than a specific design to be disguised. Because of course their major defence is hardly going to be camouflage. Their major defence is the fact that they're so enormous. The same goes for a hippopotamus, the same goes for a rhino. So unless you have some kind of lack of pigmentation or albinism, that grey colour is quite common. But they do say, nothing in biology makes any sense except for in the light of evolution. And basically what that means is that it's highly unlikely that there would be any adaptation that an elephant or any other animal would have unless it conferred some kind of advantage. So I would imagine that there has been evolutionary pressure, selective pressure, to make elephants the colour that they are. Now, Anna, while we're watching these two engaged in what is, I'm sure, a conversation, the youngster and possibly its mother, you want to know if I've ever seen elephants mourning. Anna, I have, and it was a very moving, I've seen it a few times, but the one time that I remember specifically, look at this. This is how elephants change the structure of a landscape completely. And eating bark at this time of the year is an indication of severe lack of grass and appropriate foliage. At this time of the year, elephants do not eat bark. This is a kind of end of the dry season meal that she's just had there. Anyway, Anna, I was sitting once on a very large dam wall at a place called Ngala, not too far from here, and an elephant had died, seemingly of natural causes, down below the dam wall. And so we could get right above the herd without kind of interfering with them, without being too close to them. And so they reacted. Well, they didn't react to us at all, which was wonderful. And we sat as the darkness fell around us and watched as they picked up pieces of bone and put them on each other's heads. They sniffed around the carcass, and they just stood in silence for about an hour, just as the night sort of fell. And then, as darkness came, they wandered off very silently into the bush. It was tremendously moving. And I remember I was a young guide at the time, and one of the more senior guys was there. And when you're a young guide, you want to give information the whole time and talk about what's happening. And I remember him saying, just shh, just be quiet and listen. And it was a really great example of allowing nature to talk for itself. Truly moving experience of watching these elephants very clearly in some state of emotional sadness. I wouldn't say distress, but I would definitely say some kind of emotional, heightened emotional sense of sadness. Let's just move a little bit, I think. Again, I just don't want to make any noise. They're being so confiding. Of course, just starting this the recalcitrant old bat that is Wendy is going to result in noise. We're going to go around this way. Gabby, a nice one. How long does it take for an elephant's tusks to fully grow? Gabby, the answer is until it dies. They keep growing until the elephant dies. But they erupt at roughly, I think it's 18 months on a bull and maybe a little bit later on a cow. And then they keep growing until the elephant shakes off this mortal coil. They will stop growing fast, you know. I mean, I'm sure the growth rate will change, but basically, until the day they die, those tusks will get slightly bigger and bigger. And especially those massive old bulls that you see with those huge tusks. But so no further sign or sound of the elephants, at least of the lions. We're going to sit here a little bit longer, but while we do, let's head across to Jamie. She's got a scavenger.
All right, little one. Not the apex predator I was looking for, but one very full-bellied and very clearly female hyena that's been lying in the mud. The reason I say she's very clearly female, I can see distended nipples, so it could well be one of the mothers of our cubs. Let's see if we can catch up with her. A little bit more skittish than I expected. And I think this is probably the hyena that's been walking down the road and tricking me into believing that her tracks are the lions. Where are you off to, hyena? What do you know that we don't? So when lions call like that, hyenas are quite often in the area and exploring. I'm not sure where that dead aardvark was that James found yesterday. I think we are somewhere fairly close to that vicinity. If it is a hyena following the calls of a lion, it could be that my theory was correct about them having a kill. James said that they were not looking hugely full-bellied yesterday. They still looked as though they might be looking for something to eat. As hyenas moving very rapidly through the bush. I'm not going to follow her off-road. I'm gonna loop around to see if I can't catch up on the other side. However, she seems to have disappeared from our view. Well, this must be where the dead aardvark was. I think, somewhere in this vicinity. I'm just looking at those vultures again.
Good morning, mobile station. Road and update, please.
There's some vultures there. Now that could just be when they're sitting in dead trees like that. That could be just that they are resting for the evening. They have to wait for the temperatures to heat up before they can take off and utilize the hot air currents to head out in search of food. It's just the three of them. What we're really looking for is vultures in leafy trees. They prefer the dead trees so that they don't have to get entangled in foliage whenever they do decide to take off. I'm going to continue on with my search for these lions. I'm certain we're going to find them somewhere in this area. We know that they're on Djuma. While I do that, I believe that James has repositioned to try and get a better look at those ellies. So let's pop back onto his vehicle and I'll continue the search.
So there you go, a brilliant example of winter forage eating. She's just twisting that branch through her very large crushing molars and skillfully with her tongue manipulating it, and she's taking the outer layer of bark off there. And that's some of the last, basically some of the last nutrition that's available out here. She's just listening to my voice. I obviously was speaking a bit more loudly than I was before. There we go. Very nice update or comment from a new viewer called the Plant Jedi. I always think we've heard it all, but we never have. The Plant Jedi, you say you love elephants, and if you look in their eyes, look at that. There's something just so touching about it. Absolutely. Look at that chestnut red eye. Isn't that wonderful? They say that when you look into an animal's eyes, you can kind of get a sense of what they feel and what they think. I'm not convinced that's true. I think you get a sense from their whole kind of being, the energy that they put out, that they're kind of exactly the same way as you get a sense of peace or anger from people before you've even met them. Listen. Lions calling. Way to the south. That cannot be the same group that we heard calling earlier. But maybe this group will respond. You definitely won't be able to hear them from where you are. But maybe the group that was calling around here will now respond just before it gets properly light. Jamie is hailing me on the radio. Go ahead. Junction, Central Road, and Drakensberger, like sort of a few meters to the south. Just head east into the block on the tracks there. Jamie's trying to find the aardvark that met its end and that we pulled out of the ground yesterday. Good luck to her. She's in for a stinky time. So like I was saying, a lot of people say, well, if you see a lion, should you not look in its eyes? Because, you know, we know with domestic dogs, if you look at it in its eye and it's an angry dog, it will come for you. And the answer is that I've stared long and hard into many lions' eyes, and they don't react in the slightest. Their mood is transferred by many other kinds of signs, the flicking tail, the movement of the ears, and just a general vibe that you can pick up immediately if you're vaguely in tune. these elephants especially I think are particularly good at letting us know how they feel. Hello, Aaron in New Zealand. You want to know at what time of the year we see the most elephants. Aaron, it varies quite a lot, you know. There's a little one here. And there are quite a few others I can hear breaking trees off to the right-hand side. Aaron, it really depends on where the water is. We've seen lots at this time of the year now because the water is concentrated, they need water. I think a lot of elephants are coming out of the Kruger Park at the moment, coming into the area to see if they can find water and find a bit of grazing. There's been a lot more rain this side of the Greater Kruger National Park than there has in the east. And so I think we're going to get more and more, a greater and greater influx of elephants unless there is a major sort of downpour in the eastern sectors of the Kruger Park. So you can't really say seasonally when there will be more. The herds will be more concentrated during the dry season, but now we're in a drought, of course, and so while normally elephant herds at this time of the year would be quite dissipated because the water would be dissipated, that's not the case at this year because of the drought, and so there are lots of elephants around. But they will move en masse, and it's almost completely unpredictable. I mean, about a week ago, there was an elephant in sight. You couldn't find one. Now they're absolutely everywhere. That situation won't last forever, obviously, and so it's actually really difficult to predict when they're going to be here and when the sort of most abundant time for elephants is. Let's move on just down the road here. I think we might pick up the rest of the herd, and that'll be quite interesting. Kimber, you want to know if elephants are normally solitary. Kimber, they are not. They are highly, highly social animals. Females especially, a bit like our own species really, females especially will always live in a herd of related females. So, I mean, it really is not unlike a sort of Stone Age human village, where you'll have, in fact it is very distinct, but I'll explain that later. But basically what you have is a group of related females, often siblings, often sort of cousins. We're going to leave these two. There are a whole lot more crossing the road up in front of us. And they will live together in a herd, and that will be led by the oldest and possibly largest female. So that's what happens within the herds. And then the bulls do live on their own. The older the bull is, the more likely he is to be on his own. The young bulls will be tossed out of the herd when they're about 17 or 18 years, and that's normally by the matriarch because they start to course with testosterone, and so they become quite bully-like, and they bully the little ones, and they become a pain. And so they get tossed out. They'll live in small bachelor groups until they get even bigger, and then they kind of spend more and more time alone in the bush. But they're highly social, with a highly complex social structure within the herds. Nice one, Kimber, thank you. Still not a track of a lion. Yeah, lots of elephants here. Hello, Sabrina. You're 12 years old, and you want to know if elephants can have eyes that are any other color than brown. Sabrina, no, I don't believe they can. I wouldn't say it's impossible, just because I haven't seen it, but I certainly haven't ever seen an elephant that has got colors other than brown. A couple of impala moving in the background. Another large one there. We're going to move a little bit forward. Now, Marco, you're in New Jersey, and you're asking about the history of elephants. Very interesting history of elephants, and you want to know, are they descended from woolly mammoths? No, I don't think they're descended directly from woolly mammoths. I think that they shared a common ancestor with woolly mammoths. And while the one ancestor went off into the northern parts of the world, especially during the last ice age, and developed a particularly furry skin, as you say correctly, to deal with the climate, the closely related ancestors or cousins of the elephants would have come down to warmer climes and had much thinner. I'm just watching through there. Some impala running through here. And, oh, okay, it's the elephants that's chasing the impala. Watch here, Dave. The two impala running through here, and there's a young bull that's chasing them. There he is. You can just see him on the left-hand side of your frame. I thought maybe he was... maybe he had found a predator that he was chasing, but he was just irritated with the impala. So, common ancestor for mammoths and elephants, and one lot would have gone off to the north during the last ice age, needed the fur. One lot would have come south, didn't need the fur, and that's how basically elephants here do not have any fur on them. They do have some hair, but very little. Nice question, that. Remember, when we talk about things like this, when we talk about the evolution of one species and the relationship of one species to another, especially when we talk about, for example, human beings, and they talk about our nearest relatives being chimpanzees. We did not evolve from chimpanzees. We had a common ancestor with chimpanzees. Now, the same goes for elephants and mammoths, where you have a situation that one did not evolve from the other, but they had a common ancestor, which would have diverged into 2 or 3 different species, which then became the mammoths and the elephants. Michelle, as we watch a modestly tusked elephant walking across the road there, you're in New Jersey, and you'd like to know that those tusks would be eaten by hyenas. No, Michelle, not even a hyena would get through a tusk, and a tusk is a tooth, of course. It is no different from a tooth. It's also very, very hard. It's harder than bone, and there's no marrow in it, so there would be no point in a hyena biting through it. Remember, bone is quite digestible, but teeth aren't. And often you will find if a hyena finds a very small animal, it'll eat everything. So it'll eat the skull, say a small steenbok or something like that. But the teeth and the hair will actually come out in the feces, so it's indigestible. Whatever the teeth are made of is completely indigestible. Let's drive a little further forward. Right, apparently there's a great deal of alarm calling at Djuma. I think it's worth going down there, especially as we haven't found any further tracks. So we're going to leave these elephants for now. I think they're grazing off towards Treehouse Dam. Let's go and have a look at Djuma and see what is causing the impalas such consternation. Perhaps a lion, perhaps a leopard, perhaps they're just irritated with each other. So you're going to stick with us. Jamie is off the vehicle at the moment trying to find the dead aardvark. Tracking a dead aardvark is a wonderful dawn activity to engage in. But it's just so rare, so it's worth doing. Warthogs scattering to the left-hand side. We're not going to worry about them. Sorry, chaps, to give you a fright this early in the morning for your breakfast, for your coffee. Just watching for tracks all the way that we go, hoping that the lions haven't crossed south of here. I don't see any. I'm not sure where the update of impala going crazy around the Djuma came from, so Kirsten, maybe you'd like to tell me. From Kevin Catfish, thank you. Thank you, Kevin Catfish. Kevin Catfish gives us lots of updates from that camera. It's extremely helpful. Thank you, Kevin. Now, what we must be very aware of over the next little while is the fact that the impala are coming into the rut. So often they will go crazy, but often it will be a fighting noise. And there is a subtle difference between an impala's alarm call and its noise and its sort of fighting noise. And it'll make a very similar kind of roaring differing snort when it's fighting to the much shorter, more punchy sort of snort that it makes when it's alarming. So when it alarms, it goes, and when it's fighting, it just does a longer version of the same thing. These guys look pretty chilled out, well, other than the fact that they were set upon by Wendy doing 100 miles an hour. Michelle in New Jersey, you want to know if we have to watch out for sort of testosterone-crazed impala running out in front of the vehicles like you do with your deer. Not really during the day, no, but at night, yeah. At night, you've got to be very careful about driving around with lights on that blind animals. And I think that's probably very similar to the situation that you have with the deer in the United States. Right, we are now very close to the Djuma Dam. We're going to keep an eye out. We're on quarantine clearings again. Off to the right-hand side of your screen is the Djuma Dam, so we'll head down there. Then we'll have a listen. I want to sort of gather enough momentum so we can go around the corner and then switch off and listen as we move. Many birds. Teresa, you say the impala are just barking. Are they still barking? I can see them there. They look to be having a. They look to be having a drink at the moment. I don't think they're in a state of panic. No, these guys are chilled to the max, as it were. I suspect. Stop and listen here. That is a massive, massive herd of impala. I suspect it was males having a fight, maybe. There is a squirrel alarm calling quietly, going chip, 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 chip. I'll show you a picture of him. These impala do not look like they've been set upon by a predator. I suspect quite strongly it was the males having a bit of a rut. That said, I walked past here, or a leopard that walked past here, and no. I can see what the squirrels are alarming at, Dave. If you look straight ahead of us there, you can see that pale form Wahlbergs on the dead tree looking over the dam. You might just be able to hear the squirrel going chip, 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 chip. But the impala wouldn't alarm call at a little eagle like that. Our smallest eagle. I'll try and get a bit closer. We'll just keep listening. You might hear something else. Like I say, it's possible that a predator may have just sort of popped up onto the dam wall and walked away or something like that. Check for tracks. It's a really nice shot, I think, of that Wahlberg's eagle. So all is complete peace at the moment. What I think we'll do is just drive along the dam wall and see if there isn't anything the other side. But while we do that, let's head across to Jamie. I don't know if she's found her quarry yet, but let's go and find out.
I've been following up on probably what equates to about 40 vultures, all sitting in the trees around this block. It's exactly where James found that dead aardvark. And from what I can tell, there's almost absolutely nothing left of that particular animal. I think the vultures have pretty much finished it off. The hyena was on his way to following those vultures, trying to figure out what they were so interested in. And if there was anything left when the vultures were finished, that hyena will certainly make sure that there's not much left now. Amazing how that works and how little goes to waste in the bush. I think almost that entire aardvark has been consumed pretty much in the space of the early hours of this morning, or in the late hours of last night. Jen B has suggested maybe with my history of aardvark burrows, perhaps that wasn't the wisest plan in the world. Jen B, of course, referring to the time, okay, 2 times if I'm completely honest, that we were off-road in the block between Zoe's and Impala Road, and I found an aardvark burrow, and I found that aardvark burrow with my right rear tire, at which point the ground collapsed underneath me completely, leaving us up to our axle in dirt. And it took us about an hour and a half the first time, plus a rescue mission launched by Eugene in the Mahindra to actually pull us out as we watched Tingana walk away from us and the wheels spinning hopelessly in the dust. Jen, you'll be happy to know that most of that excursion was done on foot. I have learned something of a lesson from my previous experiences. I know that James was trying to creep closer and closer to that Wahlberg's eagle, so let's pop back over to him and have a look.
Look at that, everyone. It's so seldom that we manage to get this close to a Wahlberg's eagle. Now, you can't really see from the way you're looking, but he's only about 100 feet from us again, and sitting there watching us very carefully, his head turned almost 180 degrees, of course, which is an amazing adaptation that just about all birds have. And thinking about the move back up into equatorial Africa for the course of our winter, I don't believe that this couple, there's a couple of these 2 pale-form Wahlbergs that live around here, we know where their nest is. I don't believe that they've managed to breed this year, which I think is quite interesting. I haven't seen any obvious signs of a fledgling or a near fledgling in their little nest. But what's interesting is that this is not a big bird. This is not a large eagle. And I'm just going to get the exact measurement. I think they're about 1 foot long. No, they're a bit longer than that, actually. They're almost 2 feet. Really? Maybe 2 feet. Okay. Yeah, 2 feet long. 58 centimeters. Were a big male. A big female, sorry. The females, of course, are larger than the males. But certainly the smallest eagle that we get out here, if you exclude the booted eagle, which is much more unusual. Isn't that a wonderful picture? You can see his very obvious crest. You can see his reddish eyes, reddish black eyes. And the squirrels just gently alarm calling to the behind us. They definitely will be affected by a Wahlberg's eagle. Wahlberg's eagle would love to eat a squirrel. Otherwise they eat lots of reptiles, perhaps the odd bird. Basically anything they can overpower, to be honest. Okay, let's move a little bit forward, because much as Jamie had yesterday evening, there is a giraffe just below the dam wall here, and well, I think we might be able to get a beautiful eye-level shot. I was very jealous when Louise was telling me yesterday evening about the eye-level shots they were getting of this giraffe. I was probably the same fellow. Don't panic, just stand still. How cool is that? That's a yellow-billed oxpecker there that he's just shaken off his head. That's the rare oxpecker for this area. Now let's watch. Is the giraffe picking leaves or is it eating those pods? Let's watch carefully here. Now, I know this isn't the most interesting thing you'll ever learn in your life, but the red-billed oxpecker kind of combs through the skin. There are two yellow bills there, and the yellow-billed kind of pecks at the skin. So they have different feeding strategies, which means that they take probably different sizes of ticks. There, he's eating pods. So I suspect you'll find that that big black monkey thorn tree produces so many pods, largely because they get eaten so much. Very rich in protein they will be in comparison with the leaves. Oh, he's loving those. And I wonder if they don't, perhaps some of them have to go through the digestive system of a giraffe in order to germinate. Thing is, though, with a giraffe, unless the seed is minute, the process of ruminating, so he's chewing it once now, he's going to chew it again a little bit later today, that process may well crush the seeds completely. So I wonder if the sheer volume of pods that a tree like this makes isn't precisely in response to the fact that so many of them get eaten. And Tom in Dallas, a variation on an English idiom or cliche. The early oxpecker gets the tick, or the early bird gets the tick. Yes, I suppose it does. A tick being just about as delicious as a worm. Now, there are some grey go-away birds alarming. You saw as the beautiful light popped through the clouds onto that giraffe's head, you saw him look up. But there are still impala wandering about there very comfortably indeed. So I don't know what on earth they were shouting at earlier on. But let's just have one more look at this giraffe, and then we'll press on. Put him there, beautifully backlit in the dawn. With an oxpecker perched beautifully. He's decided to come out into the open. As the sun came up, he thought, well, I know where the best point to warm myself will be, right on top here. Okay, we're going to fossick around here a little bit longer, see if we can't find some sign of what made those impala so upset. But I suspect it was just them having a fight, and then we'll head up towards Quarantine where the last tracks of the Pride were and see if we can get a direction from there. Until then, let's go and look at the scavenging birds with Jamie.
I keep touching on the subject of vultures and the fact that there are so many around. And what happens with vultures with their incredible eyesight is that as soon as they spot a couple of vultures descending from the thermals, and they can spot them at a radius of 50 kilometers or more, about 25 miles if they're up in the sky, they immediately start making their way into that area, even if it is a small carcass like the little aardvark that they've obviously gathered for. And then on cool mornings, they then settle down on the tops of dead trees and wait for the earth to warm up and the thermals to start moving through. But what's interesting here, and I'm going to call for the opinion of some of our expert birders, look at the vulture on the bottom. Now, to me, that looks very different to our usual white-backed vultures, but something is not quite right. I suspect it is a juvenile white-backed vulture. And the reason I say that it's a juvenile is the one major difference between, well, there's a couple of major differences between a white-backed and a Cape vulture. The one is the fact that a Cape vulture has a very pale eye. Now, it's difficult in this light and at this distance, but I don't think that this individual has a pale eye, but that could make it a juvenile. But have a look at the difference in color between the white-backed on the top and the Cape, or my suspected Cape, at the bottom, and the row of dots just above the prime end of the primaries on the vulture. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment in my bird book. It's not impossible that we're seeing Cape vultures. I have seen them once or twice before. They usually are moved away from their usual haunts of rocky cliffs because that's where they tend to nest. They tend to be more mountainous-based vultures as opposed to the open savannas of the whiteback vultures. And one of the more endangered vulture species, so it will, if confirmed, and I'm fairly certain that it is, if confirmed, it's definitely a new one for quite a few of you to add to your budding bird lists. I know a lot of our viewers have been working on them. There you can see, look how clearly there's a color difference. There's also a size difference. Cape vultures are slightly larger. And the way that that one is sitting makes it a little bit more tricky because its wings are all hunched over. But I think that is considerably larger than the bird that is slightly closer to us and above it. I've seen Cape vultures here before when there was a buffalo kill in the Milwaukee drainage line. So they do cover enormous distances. A vulture can cover hundreds of kilometers in one day, soaring in that energy-efficient way on the thermals and the currents of the air. I know that they've done a lot of projects involving tracking, putting GPS trackers on the backs of vultures and monitoring their movements. And if our buddy there would just shift his wings slightly, we could have a look and see if he's got a tag around his ankle. The Endangered Wildlife Trust often tags vultures as a way of helping sort of citizens and guides assist them in monitoring the population and monitoring their movements. So if you see a vulture with a tag, it's always good to report that, even if it's just to, for example, if you're in Kruger, even if it's just to the gate authorities. But I think if I try and sneak any closer, these two are going to take off. But that's exciting stuff. I'm pretty sure that's a first for most of you. I suspect it is a juvenile Cape vulture. You guys are welcome to correct me if you think I'm wrong. I don't think I am, though. There we go. Look at that white belly. No, it's definitely a Cape vulture. As soon as he moved like that, it was a nice way for us to just have a look. Awesome. And the reason that I went to just double check that area is because there were a lot of vultures sitting in marula trees with leaves. I started talking about that earlier. Most of our regular viewers are familiar with the concept that vultures rest in dead trees because it's easier for them. But that when there is a kill or something that they want to get to on the ground, then they will actually then move into the leafy trees and run the risk of getting caught or tangled up in the foliage. Right, this is the whiteback vulture. This is the typical vulture that we see on a day-to-day basis. So fairly scruffy looking bird. That's the juvenile, that's the adult with a dark eye. And not much of a noticeable color difference between the sort of the top part of the wings and the bottom half, or at least not as obvious as it is in the Cape. If we go down a little bit and we have a look at the Cape vulture, it is slightly larger, but we might not be seeing such a pronounced size difference because it is a juvenile. Just have a look at the difference in coloration. There's those dots that I was talking about that run along the top of the primary wing feathers. And you can sort of see the clear difference in the lightness of the feathers. The only thing that's missing is the pale eye. It looks, to me, it looks very similar. That's the juvenile with a dark eye. So it might not be as pronounced. It might also be the reason why we're not seeing the clearer difference in size. Just want to check one more bird, which I think might be on the other side. That is, no, it's definitely not a white-headed vulture. So we are certainly looking at the Cape vulture. Now, there was a time in South Africa where the population crashed to, I believe, less than 60 individuals. This was about 40 or so years ago. They have many conservation industries have put considerable effort into re-establishing them as a surviving population. Not quite as, definitely far more rare to see than the white-backed vulture. Now for our white-backed vulture in terms of wingspan, in answer to Kathy's question, they stand just under a meter in height, so just under 3 feet in height. In terms of wingspan, for white-backed vultures, it is about, if I remember correctly, it's about 1.5 odd meters. I'm just trying to think. That would put it at just about 4 or so feet. The white-backed is a little bit larger. I'm just checking to see if the answer is not in my book. The white-backed, I think, comes close to 2 meters, so close to 6 feet. They are very, very large birds. I think we're just seeing the distinction slightly less so. Yeah, so white-backed vulture, about 6 to 7 feet. I remember I've got a photo somewhere of me standing next to an outline of a white-backed vulture with outstretched wings. I'll see if I can find it and I'll pop it up on social media and you'll be able to see, but it was extended way past the reach of my arms at full extension. White-backed is slightly smaller. Sorry, I was actually mistaken. It's even larger than I thought. It's larger than 2 meters. It's up to 7 to 8 feet, so about 2.2, 2.3 meters. There we go, beautifully outstretched. Now we just need this white-back to join, this Cape vulture to join us. And if we can get a glance underneath, oh, not flying, just defecating. The other thing that we noticed was a really, really sweet smell around where the vultures had been settling for the night. It's this combination of carrion smell plus a sweetness to it. It's a very typical scent of vulture presence in an area, a combination of their bodily odor and the odor of their defecation. But it can be quite interesting if you come across a sign like that where you've got lots of white splodges underneath a tree. You'll be able to read and interpret the signs and know that there were vultures roosting there at some point. Now this Cape vulture has arrived probably too late to have access to the meal. If he did get there in time, he would have been able to outcompete the white-backed vultures. They are larger, they are much more aggressive at kills and able to throw their weight around, so he would have been able to get access to it. Now, as soon as it starts to heat up, and it's apparently going to reach far up to close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees centigrade today. So he'll have a chance and an opportunity to jump on board with those thermals and start heading back towards the mountainous regions. We're quite close to the Drakensberg. In a straight line, we're probably about 100 kilometers away. Well done, Marilyn. Marilyn, who is watching in Montana, has been working on her bird list, and apparently Cape vulture is a new bird for her, taking her all the way up to 135. For new viewers that are joining us for the first time, we always encourage our viewers to start a bird list. It doesn't have to be birds, although birds is the one that we usually focus on. You can start a reptiles list, you can start a mammals list. It's just a great way of keeping track. And you can take screenshots and document it. You can almost build up your own little bird list. And if you ever have a chance to come and visit Africa, then you'll have a very, very firm head start on your birding excursions. You'll be able to dazzle and impress the locals with your birding knowledge. On my latest Kruger trip, we actually all stopped because there was a row of cars there were probably about 14 or so vehicles all stopped, and immediately you start thinking something like a lion or a leopard, a high-profile sighting. And it was amazing. And then we saw all of the enormous lenses that were sticking out of people's car windows. And as we drove past, every person was excitedly saying to us, "It's a broad-billed roller, it's a broad-billed roller." It's the one roller related to the European and the lilac-breasted roller that unfortunately you're very unlikely to see in the Sabi Sands and be able to add to your bird lists. But you never know when things start to expand. Maybe when we start moving further to the east, we might start seeing them more and more. Very beautiful little bird, very colourful. All right, vulture, I'm going to leave you now. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to find the immobilizer. And while I attempt to get the angle exactly right for Rusty's immobilizer, Curtis was wondering a little bit about the vulture mating activity and breeding activity. Curtis, they're interesting things, vultures. So in theory, they form monogamous pairs that stay together for life. They nest in the top of knob thorns. Hey, I got it right. I got the angle right. And they breed about once a year, probably around August that they start to lay their eggs. And by this time of the year, the chicks are starting to be fully fledged and moving out of the nest. And we have monitored a couple of the birds' nests in the region, or vultures' nests in the regions. There was one on Arathusa that we had a nice close look at before it got too dense. Maybe we're gonna fly. Definitely Cape. Awesome. Confirmed Cape vulture. On his way. He'll find another tree to settle in. In fact, I think that's exactly what he's done now. He's found another tree to settle in. And he'll wait for the temperatures to heat up. But back to Curtis's question on vulture mating activities, because it's so interesting and we've got such a nice new vulture species for us to see. I'm quite excited about that. It's the second Cape vulture I've seen on Djuma. Curtis, the one thing I've noticed in situations like this, where you've got a whole load of vultures moving about in an area, and I saw it one very memorable occasion with a giraffe carcass, where they were all sitting in trees waiting for the opportunity to, when the lions moved off, to come down and feed. And there was one female, from what I could tell, sitting in a tree with about 6 males. And with much screeching involved, they would just jump down, mate with her, and move off. And as soon as one moved off, the next one would come down and do exactly the same thing. And she mated in that tree while I was sitting in a half an hour, no, it was probably about an hour time period watching the vultures. She must have mated about 8 to 9 times in that time period. It was fascinating to witness. I had no idea up until that point that they actually did something like that. Now, I always knew of them living in monogamous pairs. So monogamy with birds is not always the strictest of concepts. They will live together like our Wahlberg's eagles. They will live together, they will build a nest together, and they will raise a chick together. But I do wonder about the paternity of those chicks, because monogamy in birds doesn't necessarily mean that they won't mate with another bird or another male of that species. I'm going to be, hopefully they stick around. There we go. Quite possibly a new one for our new viewers. A white-crested helmet shrike. There's 2 different helmet shrikes that we get in this area. One is Retz's, which is far more rare. Oh, living together in little groups. Got the most fascinating feathers around those bright yellow eyes. Try and get another view of them. Sorry, just white-crowned. I think I said white. No, it is white-crested. I'm having a moment because there's the southern white-crowned shrike and the white-crested helmet shrike. That's what it is, white-crested helmet shrike. If we can get one more view. Come on, guys. No, they're just moving constantly ahead of us. Hello, Impala. Time. There's one. It's probably the clearest view we'll get. There we go. That bright yellow eye. Fascinating grey face. Also, fairly monogamous in terms of their social structure, but they're what's known as cooperative breeders. So the previous offspring will stick around and actually assist their parents with the raising of the next set of chicks. Nice to see. So what looks like a red-headed weaver that's coming out of its breeding plumage. It's the one sitting on the top of that tree. Oh, no. Gone, disappeared into the weeping wattle. A little bit of a bird feeding party here. I chatted to Gracie about that yesterday. Where is it gone?
Could you alarm talking in the block between?
Sorry, I'm just listening to James.
And quarantine. I'm going to follow up the tracks of the tide from this morning. We're heading in that direction this morning.
James is just updating everybody on the Game Drive channel that there are kudu alarm calls in the block around Djuma Dam, which could have been what sparked those impala alarm calls and then the go-away birds calling, rather than the presence of rutting impala. He did have the tracks of the lions heading in that direction. I think we're going to head across and assist him that way. But why I was chuckling a little bit was because he got quite excited in terms of giving that Game Drive update, and he was mixing up the word kudu with the word karula, and he kept saying there's karula's alarm calling in the block. It is kudu. Okay. Well, we've very thoroughly checked this particular area, the eastern section of Djuma. There's no tracks coming through here, so I'm going to head back further towards the west and give James a hand there. Obviously there was an update as well about Karula, which was clearly where James's mind was whirring to. That she was on Twin Dams Road. We're just going to give her a little bit of space, depending, we don't know now where she has moved her cubs to, which particular drainage line. So it's not for us worth racing off to try and find her, only to stop and for her to vanish into a drainage line. We're definitely not going to be following her in there. And just an update on that score, the den site, if it is established, will be zoned for another 4 weeks before we reevaluate exactly how it's going to be approached or handled. But still such thrilling news that she is safely doing what she does best. Now I wonder, I'm just going to get hold of James and find out exactly where those Karula alarm calls were, kudu alarm calls. James for Jamie. Sorry, can you just confirm the position of those alarm calls?
Between quarantine, Fins and Zaid.
Copy that, thank you. So exactly somewhere in between along that western edge of quarantine. I'm still fairly far away from that region, but we'll make our way slowly and see what else we can find you along the way. Angel's Aegis was wondering, would the lions not return to where they were sleeping, which is essentially where I am now, to where they were sleeping last night. And Angel, it's a difficult one. Lions can be unpredictable. Generally not though. When they tend to pick a direction, they tend to go in that direction and then go sleep in the next spot that they choose. So whilst it's not impossible, it was unlikely. The reason that I came through this way to check was just to make sure that there was no, excuse me, that there was no evidence that they'd killed anything en route to that particular region. So it's not impossible. Generally you find that when lions tend to be the most stagnant around an area, so when they tend to be seen in an area fairly regularly, there's a couple of reasons. One, they've got some big kills, or they're lurking around a dam waiting for animals to come and drink. Two, they're mating. Mating lions tend not to exert too much energy and movement. They've got far more, they've got other things occupying their attention. Or all three, they've got cubs in the region. With the Nkuhumas, none of them are showing signs of pregnancy yet. I'm going to race around and head down to help James. In the meantime, let's find out how his following of those alarm calls is going.
Now we are over here, everybody, because we were parked looking at a Cokie Franklin, and we then heard the alarmed voices of a herd of kudu going somewhere off to the left-hand side of the vehicle here. I'm pretty sure that they're alarming at the lions. They've stopped alarming now, which either means that they've run away, B, been eaten, or C, the lions have just moved on from where they were. I'm going with the latter at this stage. Now, we found the lions on this road before, heading sort of this direction. So I'm just going to ease my way down the road, and then if nothing comes out, we might have to go in there on foot and have a look. See if we can find anything. You see, I think we're too far south now from where the alarms were, but if the pride was moving, which I suspect it may well have been, then they would probably pop out along here. So we'll watch the road for tracks, we'll watch the bush for signs of tawny fur moving stealthily through. We'll try not to get frustrated when things don't happen our way immediately. Just go to the bottom of this road, turn around, come back again, then we'll stop and listen, and then we'll maybe think about making a foray actually into the block. So I don't see any tracks, I can't hear any further alarm calls. I suspect this little pride is moving though. The best thing to do, of course, is check on game paths, check where they come out of the blocks, because often the lions will use them. I don't think they would have come this far south. Let's do a quick turn around here. We'll turn around at Scott's bush baby's nest. Maybe there'll be a bush baby there. Just stop and listen quickly. There is a bush baby nest in this tree here, David. There's a hole. Where is it? This one. I can't actually see the hole anymore. It's not this tree. David says it's not this tree. I thought we'd found the tree before. Gosh. I think it changes every time we come past here. Let's go back up here. Is it there? Oh, there it is. It's there. I'm just going to switch off and we'll listen here. Lions are still calling to the far east, I'm hearing on the radio, so maybe these guys will respond. There's a hole in this tree in which a bush baby lives. Of course, we had our little bush baby in camp yesterday, which was marvelously fun. There. He doesn't live there, we're a bit far for him to come. Kirsten is finally agreeing that this is in fact the hole. Right, let's carry on. Now, bush babies, just interestingly, I find the subject of of any kind of mammal metabolism and physiology really interesting, because a bush baby is obviously a very small animal, and it eats very concentrated food in the form of tree gum or insects in order to maintain its very high metabolic rate. And during the course of the day, they go into their nests like that, and they go into torpor. Now, what that means is they basically shut down. They allow their body temperatures to drop below what you and I would consider normal. And what that means is that when you wake them up, you can actually pick them up. They don't run away because they can't run away. It takes a while for their metabolisms to fire up again before they're actually able to move properly. So you can pick a baby. If you find a nest during the day, you can actually pick a bush baby up. And that bush baby that we saw yesterday in camp was very slow until it eventually kind of warmed up, and then it moved a bit faster. Kimber, speaking of bush babies, you want to know if we have lemurs here. We do not. Lemurs are endemic to Madagascar. Really interesting sort of example. I think the correct term would be of island biogeography, where animals on islands will develop specific different kinds of animals will evolve on isolated islands. And I think the lemur of Madagascar is a brilliant example of that. They are related to bush babies in so much as we are. I mean, they're all primates, but they're not very closely related. A bush baby is more accurately known as a galago, or galago, if you like. I prefer the term galago, I don't know why. Lots of general game apparently at Djuma. We're not going to go back there for now. I'm just going to keep looking around here, see if the tracks of the lions don't pop out. But I think what I'm going to do is just do a little foray through this block on foot here. We're going to hand you back across to Jamie, and I will see you hopefully with a bit of luck.
Well, James goes for a little bumble about on foot to see if he can find those lions in the middle of the block. There we go. I've been desperately racking my brains trying to figure out exactly how the lions went from there to where James is without leaving any tracks, and the answer is they've actually come all the way up to Buffelshoek boundary. I'll show you if I can find a nice clear example, clearest in this light. How are we doing there, Jeandre? Let's just see what the tracks look like. There you go. Ooh, steady on, Rusty. Not hugely clear, but I'm going to jump off and I'll trace them for you to try and make it a little bit more obvious. Although the car seems to want to move of its own accord. So, Jeandre, if you start rolling backwards, you'll just have to come and save. You'll have to jump in and try and stop it. Oh, I'm very much still attached to the cables in the car. Now I'm attached to my earpiece. Now I'm wrapped around the door handle. There we go. We'll get there eventually. We find a nice tracing stick. Which one is the clearest for you, Jeandre? This one here? Here we have their tracks. They're not that clear in this tracking light. But if we have a look, there is the back pad over here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 toes. Okay, not the clearest drawing that you'll ever see. Moving up in this direction fairly rapidly. I mean, the front foot is here, slightly rounder, a little bit bigger than the back track. The back track falling more elliptical just ahead of it. And marching up, the whole pride is marching up this road at a fair pace. Now, for new viewers, most of our regular viewers are very familiar with this concept, but for new viewers, identifying the difference between large cats, big cats, and dogs. With big cats, they've got 3 lobes on the back of their pad. So if I exaggerate it, still not very clear, it's 1, 2, 3, and the part almost like the heel of their foot. Whereas with dogs and hyenas, it's 1 and 2. So they've only got 2 lobes at the back. Big cats have 3. With lions, you very, very seldom see claw marks. The only time that you will ever see a claw mark in a leopard or a lion track is when they are moving through thick mud or something where they need traction and where the track sinks deeply into the substrate. Oh my goodness, I really parked at an awkward angle here.